Hi and welcome to today's video. Today we are going to be unboxing and reviewing the Camlin kokuyo artist watercolor cakes. This one is a set of 18 shades and I got this for about INR 250 rupees. So let's see how this set turns out to be. So this is what it looks like inside. It's very similar to how the outer packaging is. The color is slightly different. I think it's the print quality on top of the metal, but that's all right. So it has about 18 shades. Let's see how the box looks from inside. They've given a card. I don't know if this is watercolor sheet. It looks like cardboard paper to me, so I'm not really sure if it is that, but I think they want to make it like a shade card, so that's an interesting thing. It also has all of the colors mentioned over here, which is a very good feature, and it says that these are non-toxic colors. It comes with its brush. Let's see how the brush is. So the brush does look alright. It's plastic tip, and it's a sharp tip. You would have noticed, I would have said it in all of my videos. So any new brush will come like this with a sharp tip because it will have glue to put it together. So all you need to do is just dip it in water and you will notice that it becomes flexible and it's easy to use after that. So these are the 18 shades. We have the lemon yellow, the yellow ochre, the burnt sienna, cobalt blue, emerald green, black, gamboge hue, scarlet, crimson, ultramarine, viridian, raw umber, orange, light red, burnt umber, cerulean, blue hue, sap green, and white. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do a small swatch of all of these colors. We'll probably do the swatches in this, and stay tuned till the end of the video because I'm going to be painting an interesting scene using all of these colors, and we'll also use the same brush and we'll create something interesting. Let's start creating the swatches. So I'm going to just dip this first in water, and you'll notice that it has now become completely flexible and it's easy to use. So we'll start each of these colors one by one. So the main difference between cakes and tubes. So cakes will be very less in terms of the quantity which is over there. Tubes is always a better choice when it comes to more usage of the colors that you are buying, which is why you would have noticed that tubes are much more expensive than cakes. It's because if the cake can take up, let's say 5 ml, or if you have like a 5 ml of tube, you can fill the cake 2-3 times. So that is how it is cakes versus tubes. I'll probably create another long video where I explain about the advantages of cakes versus tubes, but I think this is all you need to know right now for the beginner's level. So this is not watercolor paper because if you notice when I try to do some gradation, it's really cakey, it's quite bad. So I do have watercolor sheets over here with me, so I'm also going to try and show you the difference between a regular paper and watercolor sheets. So I'm using the same color right now, and when I am gradating it, so it's much better on watercolor sheets. So this is why it is really important to use watercolor sheets for watercolor paper and not random paper, especially not print paper, printing paper, because it's very thin. The GSM is not right. You have to have a minimum of 300 GSM for doing your watercolors. So I'm not going to be using this swatch sheet. You'll also notice it's not white. It is a little grayish. So the colors are going to look quite different. You can see it in the blue itself. So I'm going to continue my swatches on the watercolor sheet, and then we'll create an interesting scene after that. So let's start again with the lemon yellow, and then we'll move on to the yellow ochre. So it's interesting. Another interesting feature which is there over here is they have mentioned Camel on all of the cakes over here. So it's cute little added feature that they have given. The brush is okay, it's not very good, it's just about average. I think the bristles are okay. I'm not very happy using them because it doesn't hold a lot of color. You can see over here, it's like almost running out of color. So I'm not very happy with the quality of the brush, because it says artist grade paint. So I would have expected a much better brush as also with it. But considering the price point of 250, I think it's okay. Can't really have much more in this. So if you're somebody who is in intermediate level, or I think, just between beginner and intermediate, then I would recommend these cakes. And also if you're going to be traveling, you're going to be doing a little bit of travel art, and you don't want your bag to get messy, you don't want your tubes to spill out, then in that case, I think this is a really interesting one. Another good thing is you can use this area as your palette. The colors are bright. They do gradate okay. It's not the best gradation, but it's not too bad. So you can create quite a good amount of interesting pieces. Just have to be a little careful in terms of how much water you're using. I wouldn't recommend using too much of water, because then you will start ending up seeing some chalky effects. So you'll have to be a little quick. So that's the thing in watercolors. You will have to be a little fast. Otherwise, it's a little hard to work with it. So if you notice, I have been taking the colors directly from here. So how do I know that my colors are fine to directly use it on paper? It's also with years of experience. But if you're new, what you could do is just take a little bit of color, put it on this palette over here. So this is a plastic palette, which is why it's like this. If it's a ceramic palette, it will be much smoother to see. It will not be in this way. So just add a little bit of water. You can see it becomes lighter and darker. So in the beginning, you will have to start experimenting with the amount of water that you add. You will have to go back and forth, and that's all part of the learning process, and it's a fun process. So go ahead and do that. This over here now is the raw umber. I love the interesting choice of colors that they have, because in your student grade, you might not really find all of these colors. So they have tried giving you pretty good amount of range of colors, I would say. The pigments are also pretty strong. It's nice. I'm now moving on to the light red. The next one is the burnt umber. So another advantage of cakes is you just have to add a little bit of water and it will activate instantly. With tubes, if you leave the tip or the cap open and you don't close it very well, the entire colors inside will dry out. So that's a big risk that you're taking, unless you know that you are one of those people who are going to instantly close your tube as soon as you pick out your colors. So you'll have to train your mind to do that. Initially it'll always be hard, but you would have to be super careful when you're using your art supplies. I do like these colors. You can see the ones that have dried out on the top. Most of them have graded quite well and the drying has been well. I'm just picking out white. You're not going to be seeing it that well in the screen, but I think it's okay. So white in watercolors is hardly going to be used. You're not really going to be using it much. In fact, unless you're going to do like a night sky and you want to just throw in droplets of white anywhere, you're not really going to use that. Plus the cake ones are quite hard to use because the consistency is going to be pretty watery. It's not going to be thick, which is why when I am going to do like a night sky scene or somewhere where I need white to be explicitly seen in an opaque format, I use it from the tube. But if you are a beginner or if you're somewhere, you've already used student range and you want to move on to an artist range and you don't want to spend a lot of money, then this is not a bad idea. You could start off with this. I'm going to make a quick scene right now. We're going to paint some interesting thing, and then we will see how all of these colors work, most of these colors at least work with that kind of a scene. Alright, so here are our swatches for these 18 colors. And I really like them. Of course, the gradation is not very nice. So if you're going to be using a lot of water, you're going to get the cabbage effect like this. So if you use a little less water and if you're a little mindful and careful, then you can get a smoother gradation. So we're going to now go ahead and make a very cute scene. I'm going to draw a small puppy inside doghouse, and then we're going to paint that. So let's begin. So I'm going to use 300 GSM sketchbook to make the drawing, and we'll use these paints, and I'm going to use the same brush which is part of this set to paint in. So the first step is going to be to draw a cute doghouse. So even if you're not having the same paints as me, if you want to use any other medium to make these drawings, please go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to draw a very quick, simple sketch. And we'll have a small opening, which is the door. And we'll have a dog or like a small puppy peeping out. Let's add its paws here. And this is like it's peeping out from inside. We can even have a name for the dog house. So we can also have like a name for the dog house. And you can add your pet's name, or you could add any other name if you want a pet and you want to name it like that. So I'm just going to fix this here. And we can start painting. You don't always have to use the gradation technique. You could go ahead and create anything in your own style. So I'm going to take some orange and I'm going to add that for the roof here using a little bit of water to gradate this down. This is one of the easy gradation techniques that you can work on. So pick a little color, but of course you can see that you'll have to be like super quick in this. Otherwise your colors may dry out and then it's really hard to do this technique in that. So what if you don't want to do a gradation? So in that case, I will show you probably with an umber or a burnt umber. I can just add the color in the entire section. Since this brush is really tiny and the space that I'm doing is big, I have like a little problem over here, but I like how the rendering has come. So for the house, let's give a nice blue. I'm going to now switch over to a different brush size because I think with this tiny brush I won't be able to cover this entire area. So I'm moving now to a size 10 brush. I'm going to use the same blue. So what you can do is also use this area of your palette or like your can as a palette tin, and I'm going to use that to apply. So it's a really dark color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly use some water to gradate this down. What you can do is also use a small paper as a swatch sheet. Check out your colors on it and then decide if you want it lighter or darker instead of directly making it on the final piece, which is your sketchbook or your art paper. So with me, since I've got like a little bit of experience, I'm able to handle the colors quite well. So if you're a beginner, I would highly recommend you to use a small sheet of paper, add the swatch of color on top of it, and then on your final piece. Alright, so we've got this here. Now I have to paint a slightly darker color inside. But I'm going to wait it out because if I add the darker blue over here, then these two colors will merge because this hasn't dried out yet. So I don't want to do that mistake. So I'm going to head on now and create the details inside my dog. I'm going to add like a dark brown for its nose. And we'll use like a little bit of black. Very, very little. We'll just mix these two colors together. At this moment, you can edit the shape of the thing that you're creating. So I'm going to now use a little bit of yellow ochre. I am not going to add it throughout. I should have erased the lines. I completely forgot to do that, but that's okay. It'll just give an interesting effect. So I'm using a little bit of yellow ochre here and there, not completely adding it, and adding some more yellow ochre now with less water. So the first step is always to add more water. You'll have a lighter, you'll always go from light to dark. You will never go in the reverse. You will never go from dark to light. And the tongue is in between. So you can see the color is spreading because my blue hasn't dried out yet. Okay, so I'm not going to disturb that. I'm going to let it be as it is. I want the puppy to dry. I want this area also to dry. There is a little bit of that cabbage effect which is happening. I think it's just the quality of paints which is there, so you can't really do much with it unless you go really carefully and not add too much of color, or make sure that in these darker areas you first give a lighter color paint and then you go layers. But in some cases like this, it doesn't matter too much because I'm going to be adding some details inside. I'm going to be adding some lines, so because of that, all these things are going to be hidden. In fact, there are a lot of artists who love creating this kind of effect, so if you're one of them, then you're in luck. So I'm going to grab a pen now and we'll start adding the details. So I'm going to be using a 0.5 pigment liner. This is water based, and let's create the outline. Now the advantage of using this kind of liner is the advantage comes in the beginning before you do your watercolors, because this is waterproof, so I can just create an entire illustration with the pen directly, or pens, and then ink it with this pen, and then I can paint over it, so it's not going to smudge. So I'm going to call my puppy as Mayo. Mayo is one of my friend's puppy, so this is called as Mayo's home. So this has almost dried. It's not completely dry because there's a lot of water, so I'm just going to tilt it over and add some details on the roof. Meanwhile, we'll hope that this area dries out. So this is the part that I enjoy a lot with watercolors. Of course, another thing is it's not compulsory for you to add this at all. You don't have to do this. It is just my style. So I really like adding these details with a black ink. So I either use a pen or I also use ink, and maybe like a mapping nib or a dipping nib. So one of those I would use. Another option for you is to also use like brush and maybe like a contrast color or a darker version of the base color over here. Let's add these small details. Maybe some nails sticking out, tiny, really tiny, not like too much. And my puppy's nose. Okay, so what I have to do right now is to add the color at the back. Since this is a waterproof pen, it's not going to affect it. So it's also a good test to figure that out. So I'm going to use a slightly darker blue right now. I'm going to mix it with this existing blue a little bit so that, you know, they look like they're in the same family. So first, very little color, and I'm going to use some water to gradate this down. You'll notice over here, I'm not doing an ombre. I'm just pushing the color down. Okay. I want that area to be dark. And for this area, which is going to be your ground, I'm going to use like, let's do a different color. Maybe a green, because there's no green in this. So I'm going to use some green. Again, it's going to be like a flat color. Okay. I'm going to add the final details on top of this. I'm going to give the feel that it's made of wood, so it's colored. It's not your regular brown wood. So I'm going to add these parallel lines. This is also a very good practice to do this lines every day. So even if you are not a beginner, you should be practicing your lines every single day. Take 5 minutes out and practice all the strokes, the lines. It will improve your drawing, your sketching, your painting. It improves everything. It also helps you to keep it. Basically, what it does is it improves your muscle memory. So that's very important when you are in art. So this is why I was saying that it's okay if it has created this effect over here, which is like the cabbage effect it's called, because it doesn't really matter anymore. Once you've added all of these tiny details, everything now looks very cohesive and it looks really neat and clean. So this is the final piece that I have created with this set of Camel Artist watercolor cakes, which is an 18 shade set. So you can also mix your colors onto the palette over here. You can also take 2 colors and make a third color. So that is something that you should experiment with. So far, with my verdict for this is it is a good piece of art supply that you can invest in. Of course, only if you are between intermediate and beginner. So if you're somebody who's already tried out student grade and want to move to the next level and are on a very tight budget, then yes, you should get this. Make maximum use of it, create a lot of art with it. Don't stop with just creating 1 or 2 items. Complete the set of colors which are there, and then it will help you to understand when you move on to different things and different art supplies. So I hope today's video was useful for you. If you are new here, do consider subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon so you can get notifications every time I put up a new video. I will see you soon for the next video. Bye bye.